Hey guys, it is currently 6:10 in the morning on April 16th, and the other day, stuck without internet, I watched a whole bunch of movies, and one of them was Disney's Tangled, and for the millionth time it inspired me to want to write a Rapunzel romance genre retelling. And I'm finally going to suck it up and do it. So that starts with research for me. It starts with finding out all of the retellings, what happens in those retellings, what happens throughout as like a general theme, as a plot, what happens with the characters, what things stay consistent, what things have changed over time, stuff like that. So for me, this is phase one of research for that retelling, which is the preliminary stage for me. I go through several phases. Preliminary research for me happens on Wikipedia, and I know a ton of people throw a huge fit about Wikipedia and how it's not a good resource and you absolutely cannot use it, and it's open source so anyone can edit it. You can see when the last time it was edited, you can see who last edited it, and they have little sources. That's what these dope little numbers are on Wikipedia. These little numbers take you down to the links at the bottom on the references. You can click those references and find out if the information that is listed on the Wikipedia article was actually indeed found from those sources. If it was not, see if you can find it elsewhere. If you cannot, don't assume it's true. It just takes a little bit of work. Mostly the same amount of work you would be doing for research anyways. The difference is this gives you a starting place, which is why I use it for the first phase of research. So, for me, that starts with the Wikipedia Rapunzel page, or the Rapunzel Wikipedia page, I suppose. But it starts pretty simple. It says that it's a German fairy tale recorded by the Brothers Grimm and first published in 1812. And then from there, and this was the part I found interesting because I had never heard it before, the Brothers Grimm's story is an adaptation of the fairy tale Rapunzel by Friedrich Schultz from 1790, and that was a translation of Percinet from 1698 by Charlotte Rose de Comont de la Force, I think, give or take, which was also influenced by an earlier Italian tale, Petronella, from 1634, by a name that I'm not even going to attempt to butcher. It's that blue one on the very bottom there. And I didn't know that. And also, I've already skimmed through this article. And it also says somewhere in here, and I haven't looked at the notes yet to make sure that it's certain because this is my preliminary phase, but it says that there's no, like, proof that it's a German fairy tale. It's only German because the Brothers Grimm took it and put it in their book and all of that. And apparently the Brothers Grimm cut down anything before they put it that they didn't consider original in the original German fairy tale. So they cut out certain things about what the prince did, or what the finder did, or what the mother did, or what the daughter, Rapunzel, did. And there's a lot of that throughout, and I've noticed a ton of changes throughout. This one here, literary development, is a section in the Wikipedia article, and that one is super helpful. It goes through a lot of different stories throughout and what happened in all of them. Like in 1634, this version of the story differs from the later versions, as it is the wife, not the husband, who steals the Rapunzel plant. And of course in this one it wasn't called a Rapunzel plant. This one was Petronella, which translates to parsley. The child is taken by the villain when she's a child rather than when she's a baby. And this one contains a flight scene in which the child uses magic acorns to fly away, or something flies, uses magic acorns that turn into animals to distract the ogress while she pursues the couple fleeing the tower. But it calls it a flight scene. I don't know if that's just because there's magic, or if flight refers to literal flight in this instance. But a lot of the stories have aspects of magic in them, which I didn't know either. Brothers Grimm, I've always heard about how dark their stories are and how evil and malicious they are and stuff like that, because in Rapunzel, the only thing I've ever heard is that the prince falls from the tower, he jumps from it, and lands in a thorn bush and is blinded, and that part's true. But in the Brothers Grimm story, he finds Rapunzel, and she cries, and it heals his sight. Magic. The magic acorns. I think later on in this, it says that in the Barbie version, I think, she had, yeah, there it is. She uses a magic paintbrush to get out of captivity. Which is cool. And then, she was also in Shrek. I've watched Shrek, I don't recall that. But there's a lot of them here that include magic, which I think is great, because it's definitely inspired me to want the Rapunzel character in my retelling to also have magic, because relatively, from what I've been able to tell, that seems to be a consistent. Just from the summaries, it doesn't look like it's in every single one, but it does appear to be there very often, which I think is cool. But that's the thing I'm going to go through over the next few days, is skimming through the Wikipedia article here, writing down the different stories, what years they were in, what the main plot points of those were, what changes happened. Don't mind that moving form in the background, that was my dog. And go from there. But once the preliminary stage is done, I will move on to the next stage, which is checking those references at the bottom of Wikipedia and going from there, but I prefer to start with the Wikipedia stuff and check the references after, just because that's how I work best. So that's what I'm gonna do. But I will see you guys either when I'm completely done with the preliminary stage or somewhere in between to show you progress, or if I find anything else super interesting in this article, because I haven't read it in depth yet, I've just skimmed through it. So I will see you guys at some point, but hopefully this series will be relatively interesting, and hopefully this time I will actually film the process as it happens instead of afterwards. So, hooray, and I will see you eventually. Hey guys, it is currently April 25th, and I finished the Rapunzel research a few days ago, but this is the first time that I'm actually sitting down to film anything. I don't have a ton to say. The preliminary research is pretty much all that I needed to do. I did have to go to a few different pages to get some more information on the plots of some of the retellings, just to see what the common aspects were throughout. But the main Wikipedia page is pretty much all I needed to look at, and I checked the resources, I went from there, and then again I checked the plot pages of some of the books, especially Cress from Marissa Meyer, or Marissa Myers, one of the two, because the page didn't have a ton of information on what that book was about, so I went and looked at the plot for it, and noted some of the aspects of it, so that way I could keep track of the common aspects throughout all of the retellings of the Rapunzel story. So, my research here, I don't know how well you can see it, but I've got this one page here, and then this one here, and this one. Everything from here are the retellings. This one is books all the way to here, and then we switch over to like film and TV media for the rest of it. There have been a lot. Literary-wise, we're looking at 1634 as the first, not counting the story before that, where the common aspect was long blonde hair, threw hair out the window, guy climbed hair. And then I think he was like, I'm too heavy for that, you shouldn't have to do that anymore. But they don't really consider that the first Rapunzel story, it's just the first reference to a maiden in a tower with long blonde hair, basically. So presumably the one from 1634 very well could have been inspired from that, or something similar. I'm not 100% sure. But we're looking at that one, and that one is the one with the flight scene, where Rapunzel uses magic acorns that turn into animals to distract the ogress, which would kind of be like Mother Gothel in the other stories, including the Tangled version, which is the only one that I've ever actually seen. I've read another one when I was younger. It was in like a little book, but I have no idea which version that was. But it would be like Mother Gothel, basically. And she's called that in several of the stories as well, so that's not like a Disney copyrighted thing. But the acorn animals distract her while she pursues Rapunzel and the prince. The 1697 version is the one that includes all of the elements that are later found in the Brothers Grimm version, and this is the first to include a pregnancy out of wedlock. The villain's trickery is the thing that blinds the prince, the birth of Rapunzel's twins, and it includes the maiden's tears restoring the prince's sight, which is worth noting. That's the one of the most common themes throughout all of the retellings. He gets injured fatally sometimes, and generally, though, that injury is blinding, and usually she is the one who heals it one way or another. Usually magic tears. I think one of the stories of the film versions actually translates to something about magic tears. In that same version, the tale actually ends with the villain, Gothel, we'll just call her that throughout here to make it easier for both of us, I hope, or all of us, I don't know who's watching, with her taking pity on the couple and transporting them back to the prince's kingdom. The 1890 version has no pregnancy in it. Of course, in between the, hold on, when was Brothers Grimm published? 1812. So the 1812 one comes after the one that I just talked about, but I didn't write that down because I already knew the plot of that one. It was discussed earlier in my research here. But the 1891 is called, is by Andrew Lang, and it was released in his The Red Fairy book. And this one had no pregnancy, but otherwise it was pretty similar. Cress, the 2014 book by Marissa Meyer, is short for Crescent, which is the Rapunzel character. She's a prisoner on a satellite and is saved by Captain Thorne, who is the love interest. He's blinded, and his sight is restored with stem cell eye drops. So he's blinded, it is healed, but she is not the one who heals him, which is a twist. In film media, we're starting at 1983. Rapunzel is taken from her parents by an evil witch and raised in an isolated tower. Again, only accessed by climbing her long hair. The taken part is important because sometimes she's kidnapped and sometimes the parents trade her off, more or less, before she's born in exchange for a vegetable, which sounds very wrong. But back in the day, they used to believe that if you didn't give a pregnant woman the thing that she craved, it was very bad luck, I think, especially for her, like, detrimental to her health. So, you know, did what they had to. This one was translated to Rapunzel or the Magic of Tears, and it was in 1988. I think it was German or Russian. I can't remember. I don't have that written down. But that one combines the story of Rapunzel with another Brothers Grimm tale called Maid Maleen. And in this one, after escaping the tower, Rapunzel finds work as a kitchen maid in the prince's court, where she contends with an evil princess who aims to marry the prince. Which, again, very new thing. That's not in the other stories. The Hanna-Barbera and Hallmark Cards version in 1990 was more or less the same, except for the witch transforms the prince into a bird, which, you know, happens, I guess. And I think they said that that was potentially a reference to another story, but that wasn't important to my research, so I didn't write that down. Into the Woods, 1991, by American Playhouse. Rapunzel is the witch's adopted daughter, and I don't know if that means that she stole her and called her her adopted daughter, or if she was genuinely her adopted daughter. But because it seems to combine all of the other fairy tales, I would assume actually adopted. And in the end, she dies. So, not the witch, Rapunzel, which is a wild ride. But, you know, just letting you know. Barbie as Rapunzel, 2002, and this one really interests me. She's raised by Gothel, and she uses a magic paintbrush to escape, but Gothel locks her away in a tower. This one I thought was interesting because in Tangled, which came out 8 years later, Rapunzel paints. It's not magic paint, but she paints. And her painting is actually the catalyst of getting the witch, Gothel, out of the tower for 3 days or whatever. Or a week. I don't remember. I literally just watched it not too long ago. That's what spawned all of this. But I don't remember which one it was. But because she wanted Gothel to go out and get her the seashells, I think, that she used to make her paints. And it was a long journey, and it was the journey that Rapunzel was using to get her out of the tower, so that way Rapunzel could escape with Ryder. I had to think of what she was calling him at that point. To go see the magic floating lantern lights things. So I thought that was interesting, that I think the paintbrush idea, although it was magic in Barbie and was not magic in Tangled, I think that's where that came from. In the 2010 Tangled version, she's more assertive and was born a princess. It's not generally the case at all. Her hair is magic, and that's also normally not the case. Normally it's just the tears, and like she doesn't know that the tears have healing abilities until it heals the prince's sight. That's generally how that is. She's kidnapped specifically for her healing powers. That's normally not why. And in this one, the prince is replaced by Eugene / Flynn, which all new stuff except for the main components of it. And then in 2014, Disney redid Into the Woods, like their own movie version, and this one's pretty similar except for at the end she rides off into the woods with the prince to distance herself from Gothel rather than dying like she does in the musical. But that's all I've got here. And that's the preliminary research. It's not a ton, but it's more than enough to go off of. And again, there's a page here that goes through the Maiden in the Tower themes and all of that stuff. But I feel like if you're super interested in that part, you can find that just by scrolling through the very first part of the Wikipedia page. But otherwise, hooray, going through the research. The only other thing that I have to add to this is the common aspects from all of these things, and I will open that up on my phone here and read them to you, and then I'm going to add this to the notebook, but I don't feel like doing that yet, so I'm just going to read it to you. The most common aspects that I was able to determine are as follows, and then a few footnotes, I guess. Long blonde hair. The love interest is usually royalty, like a prince, and he's usually injured toward the end of the story. Generally, Rapunzel heals him with a magical aspect of self, tears in most, hair entangled, and stem cell teardrops and crests, and like I said, if I remember correctly, she is not the one who made those. It was a doctor of some sort on a spaceship, potentially. It's a science fiction novel. Rapunzel is usually kidnapped or given up as trade, but was an adopted daughter in one sense. Usually taken as a baby, but she was taken as a child in at least one instance that was blatantly stated. She's locked away in isolation in all of them, usually in a tower deep in the woods, but again, Cress is a satellite. The villain, her mother, finds out about the love interest and tries to put a stop to it, and that's consistent throughout. Rapunzel and the love interest are separated for a period of time only to be reunited. Most of the time, that separation is not Rapunzel's choice, except for in Cress, where it seems like she ran away because she thought that he might be cheating on her. That's what it read like in the plot summary thing, anyway. But generally, except for in the very first retelling, or the very first potentially original story, they're separated for a period of time and then reunited. That's all I got. And then for me, a happily ever after, or a happy for now, because mine is a romance genre story, not a adventure story with a romance subplot. So they have to have a happily ever after or a happy for now. That's all I know for sure. But I need to transfer all of those to my notebook here, and then I'm completely done with the Rapunzel research. I'll still need to do research on other aspects for this book, but this little series here is only on Rapunzel. So that's actually all I've got. I'm going to do my best to follow the process of this book all the way through. So I think the next thing I'll be doing for this series is talking about the things that I'm doing to learn more about these characters and their world before I start writing. Normally not something I do. I'm a discovery writer. I let them tell their stories, but it does result in the beginning being a little awkward and clunky between the characters most of the time, and I fix it during editing once I get to know them all the way through. But I'm doing some stuff beforehand this time to get to know them better, and it's going great so far. So I think the next video or videos of this little Rapunzel retelling beginning to end thing will be following that process. But otherwise, if you're only here for the research portion, that's it, and you're officially free. But yeah, that's all that I've got for this video. If you guys have any questions about the researching of any retelling or any resources that I used, I didn't write them down, but I did look at a ton of resources on the best ways to write a retelling, kind of things to look out for when you do a retelling, stuff like that. If you want any of that, let me know in the comments and I'll add it into the description box. I just have to go find all the links again. But otherwise, that's all that I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, like is always appreciated, and if you'd like to stay updated on this book, my writing, my editing, the gaming videos that I upload roughly every Friday, or anything that I do on the channel in between, feel free to subscribe. All the links to my authors pages, as well as links to my social media, are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.